The city was quiet tonight, not silent, but softened. A gentle hum of distant traffic, the occasional rustle of leaves, and the muted echo of neon signs bouncing off rain-slicked streets. Eliot carried a stack of books in his arms, their spines pressed together, titles and covers spilling color into the otherwise gray evening. The bookstore had closed an hour ago, and the streets were empty enough for him to savor the rare calm after a long day. His coat, slightly too big, hung loosely around his shoulders, and the scarf his sister had knitted last winter was tucked haphazardly around his neck. Eliot loved this time of day. The transition from the bright artificial light of the shop to the subtle glow of the street lamps felt like stepping into a story, a world different from the one he lived in every morning. He was so absorbed in balancing the books that he barely noticed the tall figure approaching from the opposite direction. "Watch out," he exclaimed too late, bumping into the man with a small thud. The books tumbled from his arms, scattering across the wet pavement like colorful autumn leaves. Eliot dropped to his knees instinctively, cheeks flushing crimson. I'm so sorry." The man knelt down as well, though his movements were fluid, measured, deliberate. He reached for one of the books, his gloved fingers brushing Eliot's hand, and for a moment, Eliot's heart skipped. The man's eyes were dark, piercing yet not unkind. They held a quiet intensity that made Eliot feel both exposed and oddly safe at the same time. "Don't worry," the man said smoothly, his voice calm but resonant, like velvet sliding over stone. He handed Eliot the scattered books one by one. "You should be more careful with these." Eliot swallowed hard, fumbling to arrange the stack back into order. I am careful. I just wasn't paying attention." His words felt clumsy under the weight of the stranger's gaze. The man smiled faintly, a curve of lips that seemed effortless, almost predatory in its perfection. "I can see that." There was a pause, just long enough for Eliot to feel like he had said something foolish, though he hadn't. Finally, Eliot managed to stand, clutching the books to his chest like a shield. He looked up, and his eyes met the stranger's again. The man was tall, well-built but lean, with broad shoulders that seemed to carry a quiet authority. His hair was dark, glossy, and swept back neatly, revealing a strong jawline and high cheekbones. Eliot felt his stomach tighten, an unnameable flutter in his chest. I should go," Eliot stammered, suddenly aware of how ordinary he must look compared to this man. He didn't know why, but the air around him felt charged, as if something significant had just shifted. "Not so fast," the man said, his tone casual but commanding attention. "You live around here?" Eliot hesitated. "Why yes. Just a few blocks away." "I see." The man's eyes scanned the street briefly before returning to Eliot, sharp and calculating, yet there was a softness hidden beneath the edge. "I'm Michael." "Eliot," he said, offering a small, awkward nod. Michael studied him for a moment, then nodded back. "Eliot." The name sounded different on his lips, like it had weight. Then he turned slightly as if ready to leave, and Eliot felt a pang of disappointment he didn't quite understand. You don't have to leave yet," Eliot found himself saying. His voice was quiet, hesitant, but something inside him compelled him to speak. Michael's lips curved into that same faint smile, the one that had unnerved Eliot from the start. "I suppose I can stay a moment longer." They walked together down the slick pavement, side by side. Michael didn't say much at first, simply walking with measured steps, hands tucked into his coat pockets. Eliot, after a few moments of silence, ventured, It's kind of cold tonight." "Yes," Michael replied, his tone neutral but not unfriendly. "But the cold has a clarity to it. You notice things more sharply." Eliot blinked. I guess that's true." He realized he was staring at Michael a little too much, noting the way his coat hung perfectly, the subtle shadow of stubble on his jaw, the calm but commanding way he moved. There was something dangerous in him, Eliot could feel it, though he wasn't sure why. It wasn't the kind of danger one could see, more like the suggestion of a storm beneath a smooth surface. "You carry a lot of books," Michael said casually, nodding toward Eliot's arms. "Are you a student?" Eliot shook his head. "No, I work at a bookstore." He found himself explaining in more detail than necessary. "It's not much, but I like being surrounded by them. People forget how alive stories can feel until you're immersed in them." Michael's dark eyes softened slightly. "Stories can be dangerous in the wrong hands," he said almost under his breath. Eliot caught the remark but didn't know how to respond. They reached a small intersection, the lights reflecting off the wet asphalt. Michael paused, glancing down the street. "Well, this is as far as I go." Eliot's chest tightened. "Oh, right. I'll just see you around?" Michael's smile returned, small but knowing, and he inclined his head slightly. Yes, I think we will. As he walked away, Eliot couldn't help but watch him go, the sense of something significant stirring in his chest. He didn't know who Michael was or why the encounter had left him so unsettled, but a quiet curiosity had taken root, an awareness that his life, subtle as it seemed, had just brushed against something extraordinary. Michael, meanwhile, kept walking down the street, his mind unusually occupied. The boy, Eliot, was different from the others. He was warm, sincere, and unafraid of the aura that had earned Michael the nickname, the Devil. It had been years since anyone had seen him like that, someone who could meet his gaze without flinching, who didn't recoil from the shadow that clung to him. A faint smile touched Michael's lips. Perhaps for the first time in a long while, the Devil might find something close to heaven. And Eliot, unaware of the man's past, felt a spark of fascination he couldn't name, a pull toward someone who, he sensed, had secrets worth discovering. Tonight, their worlds had collided, quietly, almost accidentally. But the echoes of that meeting would linger far longer than the city's soft hum, threading through both their lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The morning after their encounter, Eliot couldn't stop thinking about Michael. The man's calm intensity, the way he moved, the quiet authority in his voice, all of it lingered in Eliot's mind like the faint scent of rain on pavement. But there was something else too, a shadow he couldn't ignore. Wordless, Eliot returned to the bookstore, his hands trembling slightly as he arranged the morning deliveries. He kept picturing Michael's dark eyes, sharp and knowing, as if he could see everything hidden beneath Eliot's careful composure. There was a thrill in the thought, but also a sliver of fear. People whispered about Michael. The nickname, the Devil, was known throughout parts of the city, whispered with awe or caution. He was a man who had earned his fortune through things Eliot didn't want to think about too deeply. Still, curiosity overpowered caution. Later that morning, a bell chimed over the bookstore door. Eliot looked up, almost expecting it to be a regular customer. But it wasn't. Michael stood there, hands in his coat pockets, a small but confident smile on his lips. His presence seemed to shift the air in the room, calm yet charged. "Good morning," Eliot said, his voice a notch higher than usual. He tried to steady his hands as he arranged the books on the counter. "Morning," Michael replied. His eyes flicked over the shelves, lingering on Eliot. "I thought I'd see you again." Eliot swallowed hard. "Oh, you don't have to." "I want to," Michael interrupted smoothly, his tone soft but not dismissive. "It's nice to be somewhere quiet for a change." Eliot nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. He tried to keep the conversation light, talking about the new book arrivals, local authors, and the slow rhythm of the bookstore. Michael listened, nodding occasionally, asking subtle questions that showed he paid attention. Yet, behind the calm demeanor, Eliot could sense something else, an undercurrent, a reminder of why people called him the Devil. It was subtle, the way a delivery man stiffened when Michael passed, the faint respect mixed with caution in his eyes. Eliot's stomach twisted. "He's involved in things I don't want to know about, things I shouldn't get close to," he thought. And yet, Michael leaned casually against the counter. "You work here all day?" he asked, voice light, but with a hint of curiosity. "Yes, I like it." "It's peaceful," Eliot said, glancing down at the books in his hands. "Not all the time, of course. But I like it." Michael's gaze softened, just enough to make Eliot's pulse quicken. "Peaceful suits you," he said. "It's rare to find someone who enjoys calm instead of seeking excitement all the time." Eliot's cheeks warmed. I don't mind excitement sometimes. Just not the kind you're used to," he added, hesitating. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Michael's dark eyes flickered just slightly. "You're perceptive," he murmured. His smile, faint but knowing, didn't make Eliot feel comforted. It made him aware, uneasy but drawn in too. The rest of the morning passed in an awkward, tense rhythm. Michael's presence filled the room with a silent charge Eliot couldn't define. He felt drawn to him, but every so often he caught glimpses of the shadow behind Michael, the hints of the underworld connections Eliot had glimpsed in whispers around the city. After an hour, Michael finally stepped back. "I should go," he said, straightening his coat. "But I'll see you again soon." Eliot nodded, trying to mask the flutter of anxiety in his chest. "Okay. I'll look forward to it." As Michael walked out, Eliot's thoughts tumbled chaotically. He wanted to see him again, he needed to see him again, but a part of him recoiled. The Devil wasn't a man to be toyed with. Eliot knew that even if the man in front of him now seemed almost gentle, That evening, Eliot lingered near the window of his apartment, gazing at the wet streets below. Rain had begun to fall, soft and steady, and the city lights blurred like watercolor in the mist. He thought about Michael, how easily he had entered Eliot's quiet world, and yet how untouchable he seemed. A quiet tension settled in Eliot's chest, a blend of fear and fascination. He wanted to know Michael, wanted to uncover the person behind the dangerous nickname. But what if the whispers were true? What if Michael's past connections were still strong enough to drag Eliot into shadows he didn't belong in? Shaking off the fear, Eliot pressed his forehead against the cool glass. He tried to focus on the warmth of Michael's smile, the rare softness in his dark eyes. There was kindness there, buried beneath a layer of danger and mystery, but it was real. Somewhere deep down, Eliot realized he was willing to risk it. He didn't know why, and he didn't understand the pull Michael held over him, but for the first time in a long while, the quiet world Eliot had built around himself felt like it could expand. He could reach for something brighter, even if it came from someone who carried shadows of the underworld. Michael, on the other hand, walked through the city that evening with his usual controlled composure. His thoughts lingered on Eliot, the boy with soft eyes and a cautious heart. He had expected curiosity, maybe even fear, but not the raw sincerity Eliot displayed, the willingness to look at him, the devil, without immediate judgment. A small smile tugged at Michael's lips. Perhaps this one could be different. Perhaps this one could be the light that made him feel less like the devil and more like someone capable of heaven. And so the quiet dance began, one of intrigue, caution, and unspoken attraction. Eliot, with his gentle heart and wary mind, and Michael, with his shadowed past and dangerous charm, were drawn together despite the invisible line of risk between them. The collision of worlds had begun. And Eliot, fearful yet fascinated, felt the first sparks of a bond that would not be easily ignored. The city had a quieter rhythm that night, the kind of stillness Eliot usually found comforting. Yet as he walked home from the bookstore, his thoughts were anything but calm. Michael lingered in his mind, dark eyes and knowing smile replaying like a scene from a dream he wasn't sure he wanted to wake from. But beneath the pull of fascination, a thread of fear ran taut. Michael's reputation, the nickname the devil, wasn't just a story. Eliot had caught glimpses of it in subtle ways. Whispered warnings from neighbors, the cautious respect strangers showed him, even the way certain delivery men stiffened when Michael appeared near the bookstore. There was something beneath the surface, something dangerous, and Eliot couldn't help but wonder how close he was getting to it. When he arrived at his small apartment, he found a faint envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a simple note, written in neat, deliberate handwriting. "Meet me at the cafe on Brook Lane. 7 p.m. Michael." Eliot's stomach knotted. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to leave the mystery untouched. But curiosity and a strange, inexplicable pull. 1. He folded the note carefully and set out, heart hammering as dusk settled into the city. The cafe was quiet when he arrived, amber light spilling onto the street from large windows. Michael was already there, seated at a corner table, his posture relaxed yet commanding. He looked up as Eliot approached, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You came," Michael said, his voice calm, smooth, but with an undertone that made Eliot's heart beat faster. I wanted to," Eliot admitted, sliding into the seat opposite him. He hugged his coat tighter around himself, as if it could shield him from the subtle tension Michael radiated. Michael studied him for a long moment, and Eliot felt a flush creeping up his neck. "You're still cautious," Michael said softly. "Curious but cautious. I like that about you." Eliot swallowed. I can't help it," he admitted. "People say things about you. About your past. About the nickname." Michael's eyes darkened slightly, but not in anger. Instead, there was a faint vulnerability, a crack in the perfectly controlled mask he wore. "The nickname is deserved," he said quietly. "I wasn't always careful. But that life is behind me. Mostly." "Mostly?" Eliot echoed, fear mixing with fascination. Does that mean?" Michael shook his head, but his eyes remained thoughtful. "I have connections I maintain. Useful connections. I use them to protect what matters now, to make sure the past doesn't catch up in ways that hurt anyone." Eliot felt his pulse quicken. There was danger in those words, an unspoken warning. Yet he also felt a strange sense of safety. Michael wasn't reckless. He was precise, measured, controlling the shadows around him without letting them touch the people he cared about. "I don't know if I should be near that," Eliot whispered, voice small. "It's frightening." Michael's gaze softened. "I understand," he said. And I don't expect you to fully understand it, or accept it. But I want you to know who I am. All of me. I want you to see the man behind the devil. Eliot's chest tightened. There was honesty in Michael's words, an unusual openness that contrasted with the intimidating aura he carried. The pull Eliot felt wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was something deeper, something tethered to the vulnerability Michael rarely showed anyone. I want to know, Eliot said barely above a whisper. Even if it's frightening. Michael's smile was slow, faint, and filled with warmth. Good. Because I don't want you to fear me. I want you to trust me. For a long moment they sat in silence, the soft clatter of cups and murmured conversations surrounding them. Eliot's eyes traced Michael's features, the sharp jawline softened by the glow of the cafe light, the dark eyes that seemed to see into Eliot's thoughts, the calm confidence that masked a life full of shadows. When Eliot finally looked up, Michael's hand was resting lightly on the table, an invitation, an anchor. Hesitant but drawn, Eliot placed his hand over Michael's. The warmth, the steady pressure, sent a shiver up Eliot's spine. Fear was still there, sharp, electric, but it mingled with something else. Something like trust. Something like hope. You're different from anyone I've met, Eliot admitted. Michael chuckled softly. And you're unlike anyone I've known. His thumb brushed Eliot's hand gently, almost unconsciously. You make me want to be better. Not perfect. Just more human. Eliot's heart lurched. He wasn't sure if it was the closeness, the intensity of Michael's gaze, or the sincerity behind the words, but it felt like the world had shifted slightly, like something invisible had tied them together. Outside, the city hummed quietly. Inside, two lives brushed against one another, tentative, fragile, yet undeniably magnetic. Eliot felt the pull of danger, yes, the lingering shadows of Michael's past, but also the warmth of connection, the thrill of a bond that could become something profound. When Michael finally stood to leave, he lingered for a moment. Walk with me, he asked. I'll take you partway home. Eliot hesitated, the warning in his mind flaring, but the pull in his heart won again. Okay, he said standing. As they walked through the city streets, umbrellas barely needed, Eliot kept stealing glances at Michael. There was danger there, yes, but it was tempered with care, with precision, with a faint glimmer of something softer beneath. The devil, it seemed, could also protect. And Eliot realized he wanted to see how far that protection could stretch. Even if it meant stepping closer to shadows he didn't fully understand. The morning light filtered gently through the curtains of Eliot's small apartment. The streets below were just waking up, the city stretching and yawning into another day. Eliot sat by the window, sipping tea, his mind replaying the previous night with Michael. Every detail, the warmth of Michael's hand, the intensity of his gaze, the subtle hints of the life he had left behind, lingered like a soft echo. And yet, beneath the memory, a thread of apprehension still ran. Michael's nickname, the Devil, wasn't merely for show. Eliot knew there were shadows in Michael's world, connections that could complicate things in ways Eliot didn't fully understand. But the pull he felt toward Michael, that unexplainable fascination and warmth, outweighed the fear. That evening, Michael appeared at Eliot's doorstep, impeccably dressed, calm and commanding as always. He carried no air of threat, only a subtle gravity that Eliot could never quite shake off. Hello, Michael said softly. May I come in? Eliot stepped aside, heart fluttering. Of course. They moved to the small living room, sitting across from each other. The air between them was charged, but unlike before, Eliot felt braver now, more willing to confront the uncertainties that lingered. I wanted to talk to you, Michael began, his dark eyes serious but gentle. About the life I left behind. Not to frighten you, but because I don't want there to be secrets between us. Eliot nodded, gripping his cup tightly. I'm afraid of it. Of the shadows, the connections. But I want to understand you. Michael's lips curved in a faint, approving smile. Good. Because you deserve the truth. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I left the violent life behind years ago, but some connections I maintain for practical reasons. Not for power, not for revenge, not for anything that harms anyone. Just influence, protection, keeping the past contained so it doesn't touch the people I care about. Eliot swallowed, trying to steady the fluttering in his chest. So, it's safe? Michael reached across the table, brushing his fingers lightly against Eliot's hand. Safe because I'm careful. And because I choose to be. The touch sent warmth through Eliot, dissolving some of the tension he'd carried for weeks. I trust you, he whispered, the words carrying weight beyond their simple phrasing. Michael's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability shining through. And I trust you, Eliot. More than anyone. You've shown me something I thought I'd never have, someone who sees me not just the devil but the man beneath. For a long moment they simply held each other's gaze. Eliot felt the fear mingling with fascination and affection, a strange alchemy that made his heart race. He realized then that danger wasn't always about immediate threats. Sometimes, it was about vulnerability, about stepping into the unknown with someone who could hurt you, or save you. And with Michael, Eliot felt certain that he could only be saved. Michael leaned closer, careful, gentle, and Eliot met him halfway. Their lips touched softly, hesitantly at first, testing the waters, then with more certainty as trust and longing intertwined. The kiss was brief, but it held all the promises Eliot had not yet dared to speak: protection, understanding, love. Pulling back slightly, Michael rested his forehead against Eliot's. You make me want to be better, he murmured. Not perfect. Just more human. Eliot smiled softly, heart full. Then, maybe we can figure it out together. The days that followed were spent in quiet joy. They wandered the city streets, shared simple meals in cozy cafes, laughed over small mishaps, and explored each other's worlds. Eliot learned more about Michael's past, carefully, selectively, but always with Michael's reassurance that nothing would harm him. And Michael, in turn, discovered the beauty in Eliot's calm, patient nature, the way he brought light to corners of his life that had long been shadowed. One morning they found themselves on a rooftop overlooking the city. The sun was rising, painting the buildings in gold and pink. Eliot leaned against Michael, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. I was afraid, Eliot admitted quietly. Of everything about your world. Of the nickname, the past, the shadows. But, being with you, it feels right. Michael smiled, brushing a lock of hair from Eliot's forehead. I'll never let the shadows touch you. Not now, not ever. You're my world, Eliot. My heaven. Eliot's heart swelled, a mixture of relief, joy, and love he hadn't known he could feel. Then, I'll stay here. With you. Even if it's scary. Michael pulled him close, holding him against the warmth of his chest. Even if it's scary, he echoed, voice low and tender. Because sometimes the best things are worth the fear. They watched the sunrise together, the city stretching endlessly before them, alive with possibilities. The past, the shadows, the underworld connections, the nickname, was still there, yes, but it no longer felt threatening. In Michael's arms, Eliot found safety and warmth. And in Eliot's trust, Michael found redemption and peace. For the first time in a long time, Michael felt like more than the devil. He felt like a man capable of love, capable of heaven. And Eliot, once wary and afraid, had found someone who could be both dangerous and tender, both shadow and light, both the devil and his heaven. Together they stepped into the new day, hearts intertwined, past reconciled, and the future wide open before them.